Hi, I'm Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles podcast. On this podcast, we spontaneously interview unsuspecting passengers with their permission, allowing them to share their intimate life stories and concerns. As our slogan states, real riders, real stories. Some riders prefer to be anonymous, while others ask me to tell their story later on. Either way, there are all genuine 5 to 10 minutes stories, so sit back and enjoy this episode. Morning. Yes, we have another rider, another guest, another interviewee. We call him Bob. He's smiling. He's very experienced in the consultancy business. He used to be a trader, banker, however you see it in layman's terms, but I'm sure he'll correct us on that. He's been talking about how you deal with clients, how you deal with entrepreneurs, how you deal with things. Now, we have been speaking for about 10-15 minutes, and I don't want to ask him to go over everything, but it was really valuable. It's like that stuff that you would be happily paid for as advice. So, Bob, nice to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, give a brief background of who you are and how you got into things, if you can.
Okay, I'm 39 years old. My background was actually corporate law. I was a corporate lawyer working in the city in a large firm for a few years. I moved out of corporate law into corporate finance advice. Corporate finance is literally the finance of corporates. It's how companies raise money. And my own speciality is helping companies list on stock exchanges and mergers and acquisitions, which means buying other companies or selling their assets. So I did that for about 10 years, and for the last couple of years I've been a consultant. So I left the investment bank where I was working, and I work individually with companies. I tend to advise what we call C-suite people, so the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the chief operations officer, and I tend to work with what I would call smaller companies that are listed, which tends to be underneath a valuation of about $500 million. So above that, I know that sounds like that sounds like a big number, right? If you're bigger than that, you've probably got an army of consultants working from Deloitte or a big investment bank or something like that. For small cap companies, maybe they don't employ that same army of advisors, but it's a personal relationship that you tend to have.
Oh, so if you're bigger than that, you have a dedicated building for these people.
Yeah, you'd go out and you'd hire one of the big consulting firms or the big advisory firms. Mm-hmm. And sometimes big advisory firms work with smaller clients too, but when a company's that large, you tend to need an army of people, because there's so much going on there.
And I suppose, worst case scenario, if there's somebody who's an expertise in a niche, they'll call you in, someone like that, and you go.
Yeah, I tend to get involved. The company's probably got a problem, and the problem might be they want to float on the stock market to raise money for their project, and they don't know how to go about it, or they think the market doesn't understand their offering, and so they're not highly valued by the market, and they think they should be, or they're in some sort of difficulty with a counterparty, and they need money, and they don't know where it's coming from. And I tend to come in when someone refers me. So either I'll know their lawyers, or I'll know their PR, or I'll know one of the board members, and they'll say, look, I know a guy who does this kind of thing, and either I'll get involved in what we call a turnaround situation. So the company's going badly and they want to turn their fortunes around, or sometimes where you can do troubleshooting, where they've got some problems but they want to trade through it, and they want an independent sounding board to help them as a company get through their problems.
Yeah, so they need an honest opinion that isn't influenced by, isn't on their books directly.
Yeah, basically.
Like permanently, so they're not worried about career things.
If the chief exec speaks to one of his junior guys, right, his vice presidents or what have you, it can be really, really difficult if you're that more junior guy to put your hand up and say, hey, There's the guy who decides my bonus. If this guy's not happy with me, he can sack me and say, "You're not right. You know, you're wrong about this." So it can be really, really difficult. So it's often something that senior management like to do, to have an independent sounding board for their plans for the future, from either, you know, from an advisor.
Okay.
So I'll help them and say, look, you know, you've got too many projects. For example, you've got too many projects going on at once. Why don't you concentrate on your 3 best and sell the other ones? And then all your management time can be just on your main projects, for example. But it can be hard for them, because they're so involved in everything, to do that themselves.
Oh, okay. So you select that. You select that.
I can help them. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose everything you do as a consultancy, as an advice, we recommended based on these facts from what we've seen, that you should keep this, keep that, and everything else is gone.
Yeah.
And they go, and that's what you were speaking about earlier, about if you're an entrepreneur, it's hard to hear that.
Precisely so. What we were saying is, it's often been interesting to me in my career to see the different personality types up close of the different people that run companies. If you run an enormous company like BP or AstraZeneca, the big pharmaceutical company, and they've been around for ages, they've probably promoted from within. So you probably joined that company as a younger man, and you've been promoted up through it for your ability to manage the teams. You're a professional manager, which means you're probably used to balancing things up, and you're not an overly cautious individual, but you probably have a suite of advisors. They'll be advising you on how to drive the company going forward. That's very different from an entrepreneur who may have started the company himself. He might still be the biggest shareholder in that company. He's got to where he is, or she's got to where she is, by backing their own instincts. And it can be very hard for someone of that personality type to admit there's a problem with the company they've built, and it can be very hard for someone of that personality type to listen to somebody else say, well, that's wrong, that idea that you're having there isn't working, it's not correct. Now ultimately, look, they're running the business, so they've got to make the decision. Advisors can only advise, and directors have got to decide. But that's one of the biggest challenges that I face, is building up enough credibility with a really type A sort of character. So when you sort of say, look, this bit here isn't working, let's just give that bit up and concentrate on the strong parts, or maybe do it differently, or maybe, you know, approach the problem a different way. It's getting them to buy into that idea.
Different people have different personalities, as we know. Is there any way you kind of come in and just say to someone, listen, mate, the long and short of it is, I've given you my ideas, my suggestions. If you could do it, I wouldn't be here. So if you don't listen to me, then you're back where you started.
I don't always put it like that, but sometimes.
But it is like,
sometimes, right?
Well, that's what it is like in short, isn't it? You're there because they can't handle their own. They ain't got their shit in all one sock, basically. And you're saying that you don't need this.
Well, sometimes they only have one problem, you know. Yeah. Sometimes the whole business as a whole is going well, but some part of it isn't. Sometimes it can be a little bit. Look, you know, if you think things are going so well,
why am I
how
here?
come your share price used to be £10 and now it's £1? You know, I mean, it's.
You also spoke about some companies who feel they want to be floated in the market, or their value isn't. They don't think they're being valued or understood.
Yeah.
How does that come about? Because surely people come on the market, and they're getting on the market because people know about their service. Correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, I'm a layman.
Well, in a stock market, you can list your shares, and then any member of the public, whether in the investment community or whatever, can come and buy and sell them. And every day your stock is trading. You know, and that's true of great big companies, Facebook and stuff like that, and it's true of small companies that are listed as well. And if things are going well for your company, you're putting out good results, you're profitable, your revenue's going up, you know, and people are looking at your prospects and thinking that you're a good bet for the future, generally your share price is going up. You know, equally the converse is true. If you're losing money, if some of your projects aren't working, people think that you're not doing well and that your bet for the future is not a great one, your prospects aren't good, they tend to sell your shares, and the general trend will be your shares will go, the value of your shares will go down. And sometimes one of the reasons for that is the company's not communicating with its shareholders properly.
Oh, so the company needs to brief the shareholders every quarter or every so often?
Well, really, if there's any big news, there's a regulated news wire. Right, you see on telly, you know, that there's all the ticker going across the bottom of the screen if you're ever watching the financial news, and they say this price is going up and this price is going down. You all plug into a system if you're a trader, and if there's a regulated news wire, and all the news about all the public companies, you know, in the world, really, should be coming through this. And if you've got something to say, as a public company, you shouldn't be briefing one guy and then him knowing something important and the other traders not. You don't get an efficient market. It's not fair. So you have to put it out through this news wire so that everybody who wants to see it can see it all at the same time.
Is that like when one company's buying out another one? Or?
That's a very good example of it, yeah. A takeover bid.
Okay. So I was talking to a guy in a taxi today, and he's a bank manager for Merton Bank.
Yeah.
Metro Bank, sorry.
Metro Bank.
And he was saying how the American guy who owned it was brought out, but pushed out the company. Yeah. And I suppose that's the kind of news.
Yeah, exactly.
But it has to be, legally it has to be distributed all at once.
Exactly so. Through a regulated information service.
Okay, that's good.
And a lot of thought should go into what you put down these news wires, because sometimes a very sophisticated investor is reading it, but sometimes not. And you can lose people with jargon, and you can confuse people with what you write. So a lot of care needs to go into how companies.
So you need someone with a PhD in English.
Well, someone with a PhD in English will probably make it too floral. You know, it'll be very flowery prose. What you want is as short and as blunt as you can, so that everybody can read it, everybody can understand it, and the important bit of information isn't lost in pages and pages and pages that people don't read.
Yeah.
So it's not about.
So you want someone with
writing
like
Shakespeare? Yeah, only a master's, not a PhD.
Only a master's.
It's not about rewriting Shakespeare. It's about the effectiveness of your communication.
Just give them the message as clear as possible.
Exactly. Because these professional traders are out there. They could be reading hundreds of these every day. They haven't got time to be going through this and this.
Thinking, what does he really mean?
You want to pull all your really important messages out into a front in a little summary, and then you can give them the big Charles Dickens behind it.
And this is usually one sentence or a paragraph?
It could be a paragraph, or it could be a series of bullet points.
Okay, but they're all short.
Yeah,
short and
punchy.
to the point. Yeah.
Punchy.
Okay, so it's like sales, really, isn't it? You're selling the company.
You're selling the company's prospects. So but equally, if you have to just say any bad news, you've got to get that across too.
But you got to do that in a way to say, a bit like a Boris when he said, we all got to stay indoors and have a party. But only with your family.
But only with your family. And not university students. You've got to stay at university over Christmas.
And that kind of thing, you're trying to make a positive negative.
Yeah.
Maybe you should get one of those corporate banker people to be doing his.
Yeah, maybe.
Punchlines.
Well, David Cameron.
Yeah.
Worked in corporate PR.
Yeah.
Before he became Prime Minister.
Okay.
So that's why he was often, whatever people think of him, he was a good communicator.
Yeah.
Because that was his job. He was a PR specialist.
Okay.
Before he became a politician.
Well, yeah, I suppose that would be a very handy background.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
That's why, if you remember back to, if you're as old as I am, remember Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell. Well, Alistair Campbell was such an important guy there, was because he could communicate. And he ran the communications for the Blair government.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So what drives you, in the sense of what motivates you to carry on with what you do?
Now that's a good question. Now I feel like I'm on a psychiatrist's couch. I enjoy, if I spot something that other people haven't spotted, and I can pitch the company on the idea to make a change, and then that change benefits the company, and you see it in how the company performs, I get a good lift out of that.
Okay, so when you say if you spot something, is this a company that's already has you on a retainer?
Yeah, or a company that I pitch.
Okay, so you pitch you look at a company, you can see actually they could be doing this and it'd be more beneficial. Let me give them a pitch. Okay.
Yeah, let me think of. I'll give you an example. Recently, I'm working with a company. It's listing in London. It's a pharmaceutical business, and they weren't getting the results that they wanted when they were trying to list. They weren't getting the right traction. And I worked with the chairman, and we revisited their advisors. We say, okay, look, your PR firm aren't communicating properly. They're not working right. But I know another guy, and he'll do that job better. Okay, we've got a brokerage here. They're not supporting your efforts properly. I know an analyst at another broking firm who likes your sector. Why don't you choose a different advisor? I like this law firm, they're okay, but I don't like that law firm, we don't work with them. Things like that. Having that market knowledge to refresh every now and then your suite of advisors. And I was actually speaking to him this morning. I was really pleased with
your change,
with the new changes. So that's.
I suppose it's healthy because old clients or old people can get docile.
Yeah, stale.
Yeah,
kind of.
And you,
if you're in someone's keep net, if you ever catch fish and you keep it in the keep net.
No, I said that there's that tunnel net.
Yeah, that sort of tunnel there, and
then
sometimes they put a lot of effort to winning you as a client, and then once you're there, they're just phoning it in a bit.
Yeah,
that's not always so good for you as a business to not have them thinking and making an effort. So a little change now and again can be beneficial. That's one way to look at it.
In the same sense, not to be a bit cliche with a song, it's like that company should be saying to the other company, "What have you done for me lately?"
That's it.
What have you done for me? Why am I paying you? What have you done for me lately? Why am I here? You don't appreciate me. Yeah.
Well, it is a bit like that.
Okay. Yeah,
and we can all think of relationships where people put an awful lot of effort into getting there, and then maybe I got it now.
Yeah, I'm not she's not going anywhere. Yeah, all that kind of thing.
I don't know what you were thinking of.
But okay, but this has been a great insight and much appreciated interview. My last question is, what's the impact you want to have on the world?
On the world?
Yeah.
Not just my clients.
Not just your clients, on the world.
Try and leave it a modestly better place than I found it. I think sometimes, I don't want to get too philosophical. We think about changing the world, right? Change yourself.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's an awful lot of problems caused in the world by people trying to change it. Good and bad, unintended consequences. I think sometimes the best you can do is set a good example, or try and get your temper under control, or your greed under control, or that's something it's within your power to do.
Yeah, I hear. That's good. Well, thanks a lot for that.
I don't know
that's a good answer, because I just before we go, I'll just say my motto is that I change the world by changing myself, and I change myself by being a better person than I was yesterday.
There you go.
And obviously I've had more time to think about it. But that's how I look at it. And we're both singing from the same hymn sheet. So yeah, that's good. And thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Right. We hoped you liked that episode. Keeping in mind we never know who we're going to interview. We post twice a day, 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. GMT. Have you ever considered the future economies to invest in? Why not listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories? Considering Africa has the fastest growing economies and population on Earth and has done for many years, it holds 30% of the world's known natural resources. We publish twice a week, Tuesday with a guest investor and Fridays talking about investment, politics and history, providing a clear understanding for any potential investor.